Hi there, and welcome to Excel Tutorials with Tom. I'm a 26-year-old guy who works in corporate finance for a Fortune 500 company, and I am way too comfortable with Excel. But I wasn't always like this. I had to learn a lot on the job and spent many hours frustrated, not knowing how to make Excel work the way I wanted. I decided to make some video tutorials for people who want to be better and more efficient within Microsoft Excel for whatever reason. Maybe you just want to boost your resume touting Excel proficiency on it. Maybe you're a senior in college who just locked down their first job by lying about this Excel proficiency, and now you realize you actually have to learn it. Either way, I'm not here to judge, but to help you learn. Unlike the first three tutorials, we will not be learning a specific formula in this video. Instead, we will be learning a technique that I've had a lot of people ask me about before, but I've never had the time to fully explain. Many people commonly use the list type of data validation in Excel, where you can create a dropdown of items in one cell based on an array elsewhere in your workbook. As you can see on the screen, I have created two dropdown lists in cells B2 and B3. Cell B2 is simply a dropdown where you can choose the values team or IND, and it is being pulled from cells G2 to H2. Cell B3 is a dropdown where you can choose any of the Olympic sports, and it is being pulled from column E. However, at the current moment, these two dropdowns are not linked in any way. What many people would like to do, but are not sure how to, is to have our second dropdown be dynamic, so that its possible values change based on the value of our first dropdown. While I do not know of a specific name for this, I like to call this technique cascading dynamic dropdowns. For the exercise today, we would like our sport dropdown to change its potential values depending on whether the dropdown above reads team or IND. To the right of the dropdowns, you can see the data we will be working with. In columns D and E, we have a total list of all Summer Olympic sports, along with the designation of whether it is a team sport or an individual sport. Additionally, in columns G and H, we have that same list separated into lists of team and individual sports. You will notice that some sports appear in both lists, and this is because medals are given for the best individual performances as well as the best team performances, so they are being considered separate. For our task, we want to create a dynamic dropdown based on our first dropdown. Well, how do we make the first dropdown? First, let's select the cell we want our first dropdown to appear within, which is cell B2. Then we can go to our toolbar and select the Data tab. We can find and click Data Validation and a pop-up will appear. Since we want a drop-down list in our cell, we will choose List under the Allow section, and then we see that Excel is asking for a source. This will be the array of cells that we want to show up as our drop-down. In this case, we will choose cells G2 to H2 because those are the two possible values we want. We can press enter, and we now see that we have a dropdown in cell B2 with possible values of team and IND. Now, because we want our second dropdown to be linked with the first, we can't simply repeat this process with the list of sports as our array. What we are going to do is create named ranges within Excel with the titles team and IND, so that all Excel has to do is find which named range we want and return it as our second dropdown. So let's create the team named range first. To create a named range, we will highlight the range of cells we would like to name, along with its title, which in this case is the top row. Then we will go to our toolbar, select the Formulas tab, and find Name Manager and click it. A pop-up will appear, and we'll choose New in the top left corner, and another pop-up will appear. Since we have the cells highlighted, Excel will attempt to guess what we want our named range to be. In this case, we see that Excel wants to name our range Team, and that it refers to cells G2 to G27. This may look like the correct range of cells, but if we look closely, we see that G2 has the value Team in it. We do not want Team to show up as a potential sport, so let's adjust the starting point of this array from G2 to cell G3. Now we'll click OK, and we can see that Team is a named range within our Name Manager, spanning from cell G3 to cell G27. Let's quickly repeat the process for the end named range, and now we have our two named ranges. And since that is out of the way, let's finally make this dynamic dropdown. We'll begin as we began the first dropdown by choosing our output cell, which is cell B3, and going to the Data tab and selecting Data Validation. We want a list, so we'll choose List again under the Allow section. And this is where we switch things up. Instead of choosing an array of cells to be our dropdown, we are going to write a formula within the source section. We will type $, followed by indirect and an open parentheses. Side note, there is no autocorrect when you are typing a function in this pop-up, so you will need to type out the full thing. Then we will type B2, because that is the output of our first dropdown, and then we'll close parentheses and click OK. The purpose of the indirect formula here is to instruct Excel to find the named range that we have in cell B2 and return all possible values from it. So, if we did this correctly, we can choose team in our first dropdown, and then drop down our list for the second cell, and we should only see team sports. If it were not working, we would expect to see boxing appear in this list, since it is the first sport of the individual list that doesn't appear in the team list. Scrolling down, boxing would appear between beach volleyball and canoe slalom, and since it isn't there, we can feel confident that our cascading dynamic dropdown is working. There is one caveat when creating cascading dropdowns with named ranges that pops up quite often. Named ranges are set up in a way that they cannot have certain characters in their names. For example, let's say our team column of sports was actually named Team Sports with a space included. If we tried to make this a named range, Excel would replace the space with an underscore. We can see this if we go to our name manager. Excel will replace any character it does not want in a name with an underscore. This will lead to a disconnect between the output of your first dropdown, which is Team Sports with a space, and the named range Excel is trying to return, which is Team Sports with an underscore. Since they do not match, your second dropdown's indirect formula will return nothing. So, as a solve, let's manipulate the first dropdown's value within our indirect formula. We'll go back into data validation of our second dropdown and go to the source formula again. Let's manipulate the input coming from cell B2 with the substitute formula. The substitute formula looks for a specific character within a string of text and replaces it with whatever you want. In this case, we want to find any spaces within our input and replace it with an underscore, because we know that's what Excel does for named ranges. Now, in our formula, we will delete the B2 and replace it with our substitute formula. We type substitute with an open parentheses, and we select the text string we are going to adjust, which, in this case, is our input cell, cell B2, and we type a comma. Second is the character we want to replace, which is a space. So we will input quote, space, unquote, followed by a comma. And finally, third is the character we want to take the place of the removed character, which will be an underscore. So we type quote, underscore, unquote, and close the parentheses of the substitute. Since the indirect function is still open, we need to close its parentheses as well, and that should do the trick. Excel is now taking our initial input from the first dropdown, manipulating it so that it's in a more readable format, and returning the corresponding named range. If you have more than one type of character that Excel does not like for named ranges, you can stack these substitute formulas on top of one another for each type. However, at some point, it's probably better to just make a mapping of all the possible names. Remember, people like to act smart by writing large formulas, but we always want to be as efficient as possible. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. If you have any questions about the content, please comment below and I'll reply as soon as possible. Additionally, let me know if there are any specific Excel formulas that you'd like me to make a tutorial on. Finally, please like the video below and subscribe to my channel to be updated whenever I put out a new tutorial. Thanks, and see you next time.